Hey, Shabbat Shalom, guys, and welcome to Wisdom and Torah Ministries. Let me get ready here real quick, prepare some of these things here, and we continue and we start on our live real quickly. I'm hoping a few of you would get in right away and would join us. In our short. We're just sitting here waiting for Shabbat, and I was meditating about some of the things that many people argue, and I wanted to share a few things that I have learned about the reception of Shabbat, and in Hebrew people call it Kabbalah Shabbat. But Kabbalah Shabbat really means to receive. Okay, so when you go to a hotel in Israel and you call Kabbalah, in other words, we are receiving. And these particular customs is become a custom now, but in reality is a command for us to proclaim God's holiness during his Sabbath. So what I like to do is take a few minutes to, I don't know how long I will take, maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes, I don't know. But what I want to do is share with you reality, what are we doing on Shabbat, the evening of Shabbat? As I travel all over the world, I've been blessed to the way people do. They receive the Shabbat differently. So I've learned that when I go places, unless they ask me, I just basically do my thing. You know, I adapt to where they're at. Unless they're completely out of the left field, then I try to share some of my thoughts and try to edify in my understanding. But what I'm finding out is that within the Torah believing world, there's a lack of understanding of rites of passages and what really Kabbalah Shabbat means, or the reception of Shabbat. And I like to take a few minutes to highlight some things that I think will help us understand as when we receive the Shabbat, really what are we doing? There's a purpose and there's something that we are doing in all of this that allows us to understand our function. Now, let me give you a little background info into what is function and roles that we have. In Leviticus chapters 23, let me go there real quickly. I want to show you something. So go with me to Leviticus chapters 23, and there we're going to read something very significant. And I think that once we understand it and highlight it, then we will be able to embrace a lot of the things that you find in the Siddur and know its origins and its function and its purpose. When you have no purpose or a function, then you fight about everything. But once you understand that there's a function and there's a purpose for things, then now you can make better choices as to how to do certain things in your home as you observe the Torah. Okay, so Leviticus 23, verse 1 says this. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the children of Israel and say to them, the feast of the Lord, which you shall proclaim to be holy convocation, these are my feasts. And it begins with a Sabbath. 6 days shall work be done, but the 7th day is a Sabbath of solemn rest, a holy convocation. You shall do no work on it. It is a Sabbath of the Lord in all of your dwellings. So when I understood, and it was actually my teacher, Joseph Good, we were doing research particular thing, and when he was teaching me about the Sanhedrin, and he goes, let's go to Leviticus 23. He says, read verse 2 and 3, and I read those verses. Go read verse 40, and I read that verse, and I saw a distinction. Our job as Israel is to proclaim the holy sacred spaces of God, meaning that Passover, Sabbath, Passover, unleavened bread, Pentecost, and Yom Teruah, and also Yom Kippur and Sukkot. Those are sacred spaces. Even Hanukkah, believe it or not, because Hanukkah, although it is a national holiday of remembrance for the patriots, the Maccabean conquest, and how they dedicated the altar in 8 days, but it became a set-aside time to proclaim God's holiness. That's why the dedication of the altar is so significant. So on Shabbat, the whole Jewish world, and I really highly recommend that we join them, because it's a very important function that as believers we would have. And I want to encourage you to look at this and study it, validate it, and really look into it. And that book, one of those books right here, you have John Walton talk about rest in the Bible. The word menucha, the word rest, is a very significant word in the ancient Near Eastern context. It brings to light something that many people don't think about, what Sabbath really represents from a kingship perspective. See, in the ancient world, when there was an enthronement ceremony, then the king would rest after an enthronement of the god and his temple. Genesis is about an enthronement ceremony. It's a temple text, okay? God gives function to his creation. He gives order from chaos. He establishes man as his image on the earth to put him on display of all humanity, so that through Adam, humanity, okay, the knowledge of God will be known, the righteousness and justice, the honor, and the character of the Creator will be known through the testimony and the lifestyle of Adam, humanity. When they fall, then he picks Abraham and his descendants to become the vessels and to have the function to proclaim God's sacred spaces, God's holiness. So Shabbat is a very unique, it's a weekly feast, but they are all in patterns of 7 to show the blueprint of God's restoration process. Okay, redemptive process, it occurs in patterns of 7s. So I've been to places all over the world that they say, well, let's do the Kiddush. And they raise the wine and the bread, and then they bless the Lord for the wine and the bread. And they say, let's bless the wine and the bread. And you're not really blessing the wine and the bread, the bread. You are blessing God for providing the sustenance for that week. He is the patron. We are the clients. He provides the meal. But more than that, the Kiddush is the sanctification of that day, is because in the book of Genesis, the only time that the word holy appears in the whole book of Genesis is in reference to Shabbat. So the Lord has given you and I a great job of proclaiming his kingship. The word rest represented kingship, ownership, authority of a king. So when he rested, he was sitting on his throne, resting from his creating process or ruleship. So when God told Adam, I'm going to rest on the 7th day, in the ancient language, it was, I'm going to rule from my creation. And he picked Adam as his image, as the king on the earth, to proclaim the rest, to proclaim the kingship of God. Now, when you read it in that context in Hebrews chapters 4, it makes more sense, because they were not able to enter into God's rest. In other words, into God's kingdom, because of disobedience. Therefore, there's still a rest for us. There's still going to be a kingship. It's called the Messianic age. Okay? And therefore, we're looking forward to that day. So the Sabbath becomes a microcosm of the millennial reign. Now, I want you to think about this. I'm not going to really spend a lot of time going into this today, because I want you to get a nugget of information as you're getting ready for Shabbat anywhere you are in the East Coast all the way to the West Coast, because in Europe it's already been Shabbat, and Australia has already been for about 12 hours. So, but I want you to aspect and understand the significance and the honor that God gives us to call us out of darkness, chaos, out of exile, the realm of death, from the common and the profane. He calls us into his Torah and the covenant. He sanctifies us. He seals the blood of so that he can reconcile humanity. And then he gives us a function. He gives us a job. He says, okay, now that you are part of my kingdom, I want to restore to you your function as my sealed you with my spirit. I would equip you with the Torah, which is the tree of life. But I need your help. God needs us to put him on display. So he says, he gives us the instructions. He says, I want you to keep my weekly Sabbath. It's a feast. When you invite somebody into your home, now is an opportunity for you to tell them who is your king. He is a king over what? Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, not just king of the earth, king of the universe. And then you sanctify the day. That means that through our mouth, he has given a particular blessing that you find it in certain places in the Bible. Genesis chapters 1, verse 31 to chapters 2, verse 3. And then you also read, let me find the other verses here real quick. And as you do the blessing in the Kiddush, something happens. Is the honor God gives us to usher weekly the witness that we are proclaiming his kingship and ownership, not only of the earth, but also the universe. Now, I want you to meditate on this as you are welcoming Shabbat today. When you raise your voices to do the Kiddush, what you are doing. I mean, God takes you from the profane, from the realm of death to the realm of life. He seals you with his spirit. He equips you with his Torah, and then he teaches you a royal language. And immediately he teaches you how to become a witness. So now everywhere you are around the world, from sundown on Friday to sundown on Saturday, the whole Jewish world is sanctifying God's name through the Kiddush, through the study of the Torah, through the observance of the day. To rest, it doesn't mean not to do anything. It means to proclaim his kingship, proclaim his ruleship, proclaim his authority on the earth. And he is choosing us to do so. Now the table, though, after the destruction of the table, and prior to that, the table is a microcosm of the altar. You have bread as in the temple. You put salt as covenant as in the temple. There is wine as libation offerings in the temple. There's the only time that at the Torah tells us that the Aaronic blessing is only for the sons of Aaron. The sons of Aaron in the temple were the ones who will sing the Aaronic blessing. They chant it. But it's quite interesting that even in Judaism, on Friday night, on Shabbat, they allowed all the men of Israel to proclaim the Aaronic blessing to their children because they recognize that they're doing the function on that day of Adam as the original plan of God for humanity to be kings and priests, to what to not the office but the function of a king and a priest. A priest is a mediator. He leads someone to the worship of God. A king establishes rules, make sure that everything's is working on point. That's what we do sometimes, in that we are helping people understand the Torah and separating the holy and the profane, the clean and unclean, and showing them what is proper and what is not. Someone gets sick and they need healing. We pray to the Father. We intercede on their behalf. Function the feast. All of Israel has the opportunity to intercede on behalf of humanity and the family to the Creator as kings and priests. He provides the food, the double blessing, 2 breads representing the double blessing of the manna in the wilderness. Everything deals. When you wash your hands on the Kabbalah Shabbat, that's not a man-made command, guys. That comes from the temple. The priests will wash their feet and their hands before they served. Feet, walking in the commandments, hands, acting on the righteousness of God. So when you wash your hands on Shabbat, what you're in fact saying is, Lord, am I righteous enough? Have I acted righteously? In your eyes to sit. Did you know that your house becomes a microcosm of the temple or a messianic age? You become an embassy of God's shalom. You see, many people don't recognize that the word shalom, that's why you say shalom Shabbat. In chaos, then the kingdom is at peace. The shalom of God has been extended to you and I. And the only thing he wants from us is to proclaim it, not to declare, because we don't have the legal right to change anything and declare anything, but to proclaim his goodness, to proclaim his kingship, to proclaim his ownership, to proclaim how faithful he is, to regather us and forgive us from our transgressions, bring remission from eternal damnation, forgive us, restore us, sanctify us, purify us, and then he gives us a gift, his Torah. Then he gives us a seal, his spirit of ownership. And then he gives us the Sabbath as a sign of a covenant, that we are the people who convey the message to the nations that there is God, and that the God of Israel is the God of creation and the universe. The candles is more of a custom, but the candles, it represents, it's a sign. If you be walking, and when I go to Israel and I spend Shabbat in Israel, I love it because you can be walking by a community and you see candles, and just like a mezuzah out the door, you know who lives there. These are tools to witness, tools to be an example, tools that God allows us to have in order for us to bear witness to whom we serve. Well, everyone is fighting about Hanukkah, when in fact it's about the dedication of the altar, restoring the authority of God in his temple, the ownership, removing the shame from the Greeks, and restoring the honor of our King. Instead, we should be focusing on how can we honor him the proper way. So as I'm reading the Kiddush, by the way, the Sabbath is not officially the Sabbath until you read the Kiddush, because that's what the command says in Leviticus 23. Proclaiming his holy Sabbath. How do we do it? Through the Kiddush, which is composed of verses. So I'm going to read it, and you'll see what I mean. But I want you to focus on the language that I'm going to use that is here in the Siddur, in the Art Scroll Complete Siddur, in page 395. I'm going to read it in English, because if I do it in Hebrew, then I'm going to translate. So I'd rather do it in English right now for the sake of time. I want you to listen to this. The sixth day, thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all their array. On the seventh day, Elohim completed his work, which he had done. And he abstained on the seventh day from all his work, which he had done. God blessed the seventh day and hallowed it. Okay? When you look that up in the Hebrew, the root word is kadosh, is, holy. Okay? Now it says, and he hallowed it, because on it he abstained from all the work which he created to make, what God created to make. And then we bless God for the fruit of the vine, because he's our patron and he's providing our substance. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who creates the fruit of the vine. And we all said amen. And then we say, I want you to listen to these words. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who has sanctified us with his commandments, who took pleasure in us with love and favor, and gave us his holy Sabbath as a heritage, a remembrance of creation. For that date is the prologue to the holy convocations, a memorial of the exodus from Egypt. For us did you choose, and us did you sanctify. Now think about this. He sanctified you from the nations to proclaim who is the King of the universe. That's a very special job we got. It says, and us did you sanctify from all nations, and your holy Sabbath with love and favor did you give us as a heritage. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, who sanctifies the Shabbat. There's also the prayer for the blessing of the bread, the blessing of the children. But what I wanted to read to you today is the Kiddush and how we welcome the Shabbat, proclaiming the holiness, proclaiming the function of the Creator as Creator, when he brought order from chaos, light from darkness. He brought his shalom on humanity. Humanity rejected it, went into exile, went into shame, went into the realm of death due to rebellion. Now, through Yeshua, our Messiah, he has forgiven and given remission to us when we call to him to forgive us. And he forgives us from our willful rebellions. And then he allows us to come into his sacred space, the kingdom. He shares with us the Torah so we will know all the instructions. And then he calls you and I to a great job and honor, to proclaim his kingship, to proclaim his holiness, to proclaim his character, to proclaim his authority. So when you receive Shabbat, please do the Kiddush. Join all of Israel every Friday evening, all as one people with one heart, with one mind and one voice, proclaiming the sanctity of the day, and that God has chosen you and I as witnesses to usher, at least for this week, the shalom of God, the peace of God that is beyond any understanding. Shabbat shalom. And I pray this helps you a little bit to understand the purpose and the function as to why we do the Kiddush. Not because we want to be like the Orthodox, but we want to thank the temple service Orthodox that for the 1,000 years, these prayers based on verses intact, so that you and I will know how to properly, and I'm grateful for Israel, so to teach us how to properly approach him and how to sanctify and how they have for Israel. Shabbat shalom.